Just enjoy and listen to, and have a fun of it.
Hello, everyone. Just have fun. This is Dexter.
And Claire of Story Radio Station.
It's great to have you with us.
It is indeed. Today we're diving deep into something truly spectacular, a piece of history that's, well, still making waves globally.
Absolutely. And before we really get started, if you're enjoying what we do here at Story Radio Station, please, take a quick second to subscribe, maybe give us a like, and definitely hit that notification bell. Honestly, your click means as much to us as well as finding a Silla gold crown.
That's quite the comparison, but yes, it really does help us out. And the topic today definitely warrants the excitement.
Right. So, Claire, we picked the Silla gold crown because, well, it's popped up in the news again recently. Remember during the Apex summit here in Korea, there was quite a bit of talk when President Lee Jae-myung gave, I think it was a replica or a really detailed cultural asset version of the Silla gold crown to former U.S. President Trump.
That's right, yeah. It was a very visible moment. And it wasn't just that gift, The Gyeongju National Museum actually put on a special exhibition, timed perfectly, really, to coincide with APEC.
Oh, interesting. Leveraging the crown's prestige.
Exactly. It's a fantastic example of how these ancient artifacts are still working, functioning as real cultural assets, boosting national image in, well, high-stakes diplomacy.
Okay, so setting aside all the politics and the diplomatic implications for now, our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to get into the real story behind this incredible crown, the secrets that, honestly, President Trump and probably most people would never even guess are there. We're talking ancient power struggles, shamanism, this huge Eurasian gold network. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. So if you're ready, let's start with part one. We'll dig into, when and why these amazing crowns first appeared in Silla and the story of this really revolutionary king who used them to basically cement his power when things were looking a bit shaky.
Okay, so the timing. That's the first thing that really jumps out at me. The period when these gold crowns start showing up in Silla tombs lines up perfectly with this massive shift in Silla's history.
That connection is absolutely crucial. You see these Silla gold crowns and also the gilded bronze ones being buried with the elite pretty consistently from roughly the late 4th century up until the early or maybe mid-7th century.
About 200 years or so.
Yeah, roughly that window and that time frame. It precisely matches the period when Silla was transforming itself, moving from this, pretty volatile, loose federation of tribes, sometimes called Jirim or Saro in the older records, into a much more stable, centralized ancient state. It was a huge period of political consolidation.
Which means we can't just look at these crowns as like fancy jewelry.
Yeah.
They were something more, like documents almost.
Oh, absolutely more. They were pure regalia. They were the visual symbols of power and authority. Think about it. This emerging Silla elite, they needed something really tangible, really magnificent to show everyone, hey, we're in charge now. It legitimized their political power and maybe even more importantly, their religious authority.
Religious authority.
Definitely. In that era, the question of who got to wear the gold crown, that literally determined who was seen as the legitimate connection to the heavens, the proxy of the heavenly deity, if you will. It was an existential symbol for the rulers.
And the key figure in all this, the guy who really pushed Silla from that federation towards a kingdom was KingJijeung, right? The 21st king.
Yeah.
He reigned from 500 to 514 AD.
KingJijeung, yes.
Yeah.
He's fascinating because he started off in such a precarious position. He inherited the title Merpgen, which basically meant Grand Chief, but his path to the throne wasn't straightforward at all.
How so?
Well, he was actually the 5th cousin once removed of the previous king, King Seoji, and King Seoji died suddenly without an heir. So Jijeong's family connection was, pretty distant. It meant his claim wasn't automatically strong. He was kind of an outsider who got elevated by circumstance.
Wow, 5th cousin once removed. That sounds like a recipe for serious political trouble, especially if Silla was still basically run by powerful regional chiefs. Is there proof his authority was weak at the start?
We have some really compelling archaeological evidence, actually, from his 3rd year on the throne, 503 AD. It's the Pohang Nangzuri Stela, an inscription found on a stone marker.
Okay, what does it say?
It's incredibly revealing. First off, it doesn't call Jijeong the supreme ruler. It refers to him using the title Galmunwang. Now, that title was often given to other high-ranking royals, sometimes even someone subordinate to the main Meripgan.
So right away, that suggests he wasn't seen as the absolute top dog.
Exactly. But the second thing, and this is maybe even more striking, is what the stele is actually about. It records that to sort out some local issue in the Yongle area, they had to call a meeting. And who attended? 7 regional representatives, the Chulong, which translates to 7 chiefs.
7 chiefs, meeting to handle local government stuff.
Yep. And they weren't just advisors. The inscription makes it clear they were the decision makers in this case.
7 chiefs making decisions. And the supposed king is mentioned with a lesser title that just screams, "We're still a federation, folks." And the king is just like the chairman of the board.
That's a great way to put it. The stele is like a historical snapshot proving that early in his reign, GeumgwanChong was stuck in a system where power was really shared or maybe competed for among these powerful aristocratic families. He was the Maripgan, the highest chief, sure, but not an absolute monarch yet. And that weakness, that vulnerability, that's clearly what lit the fire under him to make some radical changes.
Okay, so GeumgwanChong sees this threat, this decentralized power structure, and instead of just trying to gradually gain more influence, he goes big. He launches what sounds like a constitutional overhaul almost immediately after that 7 chiefs incident in 503 AD.
It was incredibly fast and very strategic. Literally just 1 month after that stele provided hard evidence of how distributed power still was, GeumgwanChong started fundamentally changing how the state even identified itself.
How did he do that?
First, he officially declared the national name would be Silla. Just Silla. Dropping those older, maybe more regional names like Jirim or Sero. It was an assertion of a single unified identity.
Consolidating the brand, basically. But the real earthquake must have been the change to his own title.
Oh, absolutely pivotal. GeumgwanChong ditched all those unique ancient Silla titles, GeumgwanChong, and crucially his own inherited title, Maripgan, and instead, he adopted the title used by the powerful empires around them, the one everyone recognized. Chinese character Wang, meaning king.
You know, for us today, changing one word might not seem like a huge deal. But dropping Maripgan for Wang, that wasn't just paperwork, was it?
Not even close. It was a formal public declaration, unmistakable. He was saying, the old tribal federation, it's over, done. By calling himself Wang, GeumgwanChong set himself completely apart from those Chilwang, the 7 chiefs, and every other noble family out there. He wasn't just first among chiefs anymore. He was the only ruler, the dominant one, sanctioned by a higher power. It marked the switch, the irreversible shift towards a centralized, absolute monarchy.
And the moment he declares himself the one and only absolute ruler, he needs a symbol that says exactly that, visually. Is this where the gold crown really steps up? From maybe just one type of fancy hat to the exclusive symbol of the king?
That's the critical link, yes. The gold crown, especially with its distinct northern shamanic design elements, which we'll get into,
Right.
It became the visual certificate, you could say, during this whole political transformation.
A visual certificate. I like that.
It symbolized the Wang's exclusive sacred authority. By wearing that specific crown, he was visually proving he was the only one chosen by the heavens. It was a way to silence any lingering claims from other powerful families who might have preferred the old Maripgan system where they had more say.
Wow. Okay, so beyond the symbols and titles, Gigi also made some big moves on the social and economic front. We have to talk about him abolishing sunjang. That's human sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
In 502 AD, during his predecessor's funeral. Now, people often say, oh, how humane, but there must have been some hard-nosed political and economic thinking behind that, too.
Oh, it was absolutely statecraft. Pure and simple. The practice of sunjang, burying living servants, guards, sometimes even concubines, with a dead ruler that was like the ultimate display of raw, primitive, shamanistic power. It showed the ruler's control extended even beyond death.
Pretty brutal.
Extremely. But GeumgwanChong, or perhaps his advisors, realized this tradition was just economically disastrous for a state trying to grow and centralize.
Right, because every single person buried was lost labor, gone forever.
Precisely. In an ancient farming society, human labor was everything. It was the engine of the economy. So preserving the workforce was critical. By getting rid of this ritual, GeumgwanChong was actually strengthening the national economy, making the state function more rationally. He was essentially saying, look, the old way of showing power by destroying resources, by killing people, that's finished.
So the system kind of flipped.
Yeah.
Instead of demonstrating power through this temporary, bloody, labor-intensive act of sunjang, you demonstrate it with something permanent, something durable, something metallic, the gold crown. The crown becomes the lasting symbol of authority that doesn't bankrupt the state.
That sums it up perfectly. And it fits with his other reforms, too, like encouraging Ugiyeong using oxen for plowing, which massively boosted agricultural output. So you see this package.
Yeah.
Unify the name, rationalize the state by ending sacrifice, boost the economy, establish the exclusive title of Wang. All these things work together, transforming GiJijeung from this potentially weak chief into the real founder of a stable, powerful ancient kingdom.
Okay, so the gold crown becomes the ultimate external symbol of the new absolute Wang. But, and this is the part I find genuinely mind-blowing, there's evidence the Silla elite weren't just changing their titles and clothes, they were changing their actual bodies.
We're talking about Pyongdu, right? Artificial cranial deformation.
Yes, Pyondu. It's the practice of intentionally reshaping the skull during infancy. Usually it involves binding the baby's head very tightly, perhaps between boards or with tight cloth wrappings, to make the skull grow into a specific shape, either elongated, kind of stretched backwards, or sometimes flattened. And crucially, it's permanent, irreversible.
That sounds intense and painful. Did Silla royalty really do this?
Oh yes, the archaeological evidence is quite clear. And wasn't unique to Silla, actually. The practice was pretty widespread across ancient Northeast Asia. We see it in parts of China, the Russian Far East, and significantly for us, it's confirmed in elite burials in both Silla and the neighboring Gaia Confederacy.
Gaia, too. Interesting. Any specific examples? Yeah, for instance, in the GeumgwanChong tombs, which are associated with Gaia, archaeologists found 10 skulls showing clear signs of this deformation, all belonging to the elite class. So this wasn't some weird fringe thing. It was a distinct marker of the ruling group.
Okay, now this connection, it immediately makes me think about Silla fitting into a much bigger picture, a wider network, right? I've definitely read about links to the Huns.
That link is one of the most exciting and debated aspects of this whole story. The practice of artificial cranial deformation, Kyungdu, is strongly associated with various northern nomadic groups, most famously the Huns, who were a dominant force across the Eurasian steppes.
So the fact that Silla and Gaia elites were doing this suggests
What?
that they were descended from Huns, or copying them.
It suggests a connection, whether it was direct lineage or more likely the adoption of cultural practices to claim legitimacy. It points to the Silla ruling class being plugged into, or at least drawing authority from, this vast Eurasian military and shamanic network that stretched right across the continent. It gave them a powerful, non-local source of prestige.
But why? Why adopt such a drastic physical change? What message did having a differently shaped head send?
Well, there are probably a couple of layers to it. The first is pretty straightforward sociology. It was a physical badge of status, a permanent, unforgeable mark that separated the sacred elite from everybody else.
Like a built-in VIP pass.
Kind of, yeah. And we see this elsewhere, too. Remember the amazing finds at Tilia Tepe in Afghanistan? There was a woman buried there with a spectacular gold crown, very nomadic in style, and her skull was also artificially deformed. So this connection between deformed skulls and elite status, often involving gold, seems to be a pattern across Eurasia.
Okay, so it marks you as elite. What's the deeper layer?
The deeper layer gets into the ritualistic, the shamanic meaning. The idea is that reshaping the skull permanently imprinted a kind of shamanic power or sacredness onto the person's very being. Some scholars suggest the elongated head shape might have been meant to mimic a bird, connecting the ruler to sky gods or solar deities. It physically marked the ruler as someone special, someone capable of acting as a bridge, a proxy for the heavenly deity.
Wow. So if Pyongdu, the head shaping, makes the king's body inherently sacred, where does the gold crown fit in? Is it redundant?
Not redundant, complementary. Think of Pyongdu as the foundation. It makes the ruler's sacred status inherent, physical, permanent. You're born into it and your body proves it. The gold crown then becomes the ultimate external symbol, the ritual tool, layered on top of that sacred foundation.
Ah, I see.
So if the skull shape is the biological proof that you're the chosen one, the shaman king who can connect heaven and earth, then the crown with its specific symbols is like the ceremonial antenna. It's the device you wear during rituals to visibly activate and complete that connection.
That is just incredible. So we've got a political revolution changing titles, the social and economic revolution changing state practices like sacrifice, and even a physical revolution changing the bodies of the rulers themselves. And the gold crown sits right at the center, the glittering summary of all these huge changes, showing how Silla grabbed onto these radical, often northern Eurasian ideas to build its absolute power.
It really highlights the lengths the Silla rulers went to. They weren't messing around. They built a new kind of state, and they needed new, powerful symbols and bodies to match. So we've set the scene. We know the political climate. We know about the kings themselves, even their physical forms. After a quick break, let's get into the crowns themselves, the dramatic discoveries, the archaeological controversies, and what those amazing designs actually mean. Music break.
Welcome back to Story Radio Station's deep dive on the Silla Gold Crown. Just to quickly bring us back up to speed from part 1, we talked about how these incredible crowns really emerged during a pivotal moment in Silla history.
Right, when KingJijeung was steering Silla away from being a loose group of chiefs, the Meripgan system, towards a proper centralized kingdom under a Wang.
Exactly. And this wasn't just about titles. It involved big policy shifts like getting rid of human sacrifice, sunjang, and even physically marking the elite through practices like cranial deformation or pyongdu. So the crowns are like the ultimate symbols of that whole transformation, political, social, even physical.
Okay, so now let's shift gears to when these treasures actually came to light in modern times. The first big one was found in 1921, right? At GeumgwanChong, literally the Gold Crown tomb. That discovery basically put Silla on the map internationally as the Kingdom of Gold.
Oh, it was a massive sensation. Absolutely huge. The amount of gold, the sheer quality, it just blew people away. You have to remember, before 1921, a lot of the world, especially the West, tended to see the Korean Peninsula as sort of a cultural footnote to China.
Right.
Finding these unique, stunningly crafted crowns, it forced historians everywhere to sit up and recognize Silla's independent wealth, its power, its distinct culture.
And there's always a but with early archaeology, isn't there? The way that first crown was found, it's kind of a mixed story, a bit tragic even.
It is. There's a real paradox there.
Yeah.
The excavation of GeumgwanChong happened during the Japanese colonial period, and it was carried out by the Japanese Governor General's office.
And unfortunately, the methods used back then were often, well, let's just say they were geared towards finding treasure quickly, not towards careful scientific recording. It was often rapid, sometimes quite destructive digging.
I've heard some horror stories about the techniques they used back then.
Sadly, some of them are true. We have historical accounts confirming pretty poor practices. For some of the other big tombs nearby in the Hwangnam area, there are even records suggesting that sometimes explosives were used to get through the thick layers of stone in the mounds faster.
Explosives on an ancient tomb, that's devastating to think about, especially with delicate gold artifacts inside.
It really underscores the priority back then. Find the shiny objects, don't worry so much about the context. And that lack of careful recording, the destruction of the original placement of things, that's led to an irreparable loss of crucial archaeological information. We lost the context, exactly where things were, how they related to the body, to each other.
And that lost context is why we still don't know for sure who was buried in GeumgwanChong, right? It's still a big mystery.
It's one of Silla's biggest mysteries, yes. The only real clue we have about who was buried there is an inscription found on a sword scabbard that was recovered from the tomb.
Right, the Isajiwang inscription.
Correct. It reads Isajiwang. Now, the tomb itself is generally dated to the late 5th or maybe early 6th century, putting it right around the time of KingJijeung's reforms we talked about. The problem is the name Isajiwang doesn't show up anywhere in the official histories, like the Samgik-sagi or the Samguk-yusa.
So who on earth was Isajiwang? Was he a lost king? A different kind of Wang?
That's the million-dollar question, and scholars have debated it endlessly. Given the political situation back then, Silla still figuring out its power structure, there are a few possibilities. Maybe Isajiwang was a really high-ranking noble, someone who wielded king-like power in his own region.
Or maybe, thinking back to those Chilwang, the 7 chiefs from the Steel, could he have been one of them? A regional king under the main king?
That's another strong possibility. It implies that maybe, during that transition period, the title Wang wasn't exclusively used for the single absolute ruler just yet.
But we can't know for sure because the original dig messed things up.
Precisely. Because that early excavation was so focused on getting the goods out, we lost the vital contextual clues, the exact layout, maybe other associated artifacts that could have told us if this was the tomb of the king or a powerful regional figure or someone else entirely. The Isajiwang mystery is a direct result, a tragedy, really, of that unscientific approach.
Okay, so the early digs were problematic, but thankfully things got better. After Korea's liberation, archaeological methods improved dramatically. And in the 1970s, we had these major, properly scientific excavations, GeumgwanChong, the Heavenly Horse Tomb, in 73, and the massive Hwangnam-bigchong, the Great Tombs of Hwangnam, in 74. These finally gave us a really clear picture of how these royal Silla tombs were actually built.
Yes, those excavations were landmark moments. They revealed the typical structure, which is called a GeumgwanChong. It basically means a stone mound wooden chamber tomb. It's a very distinct, very elaborate, and very protective type of construction.
Can you walk us through it? Because understanding the structure helps explain why so much amazing stuff, especially gold, survives so well inside.
Absolutely. So first, they dig a large pit into the ground. Inside this pit, they construct not one, but two wooden chambers. There's an inner chamber, which holds the actual wooden coffin with the deceased ruler.
Okay.
And then next to it or surrounding it, there's a separate, often larger outer chamber. This is sometimes called a sujangwe, or storage chamber. And this is where they packed in thousands upon thousands of burial goods, pottery, bronzeware, weapons, and of course all the gold regalia, including the crowns.
So the really valuable stuff wasn't just in the coffin with the king. It was stored separately around the king's chamber. That's a key difference.
It is. Then, once the king and all the goods were in place, they covered the entire wooden structure with a huge pile of river stones. That's the jiksuk part. This stone layer acted as a barrier, making it incredibly difficult to rob the tomb without a massive effort.
Like a built-in security system.
Pretty much. And finally, over the top of all those stones, they heaped up a massive earthen mound, the bongto. The sheer size of these mounds, Hwangnam-dakong, is just enormous. Was itself a statement about the power and wealth of the person buried inside.
And those careful 1970s excavations just brought out an unbelievable amount of detail. I remember seeing the numbers from GeumgwanChong alone. They're just staggering.
They really are. Just from GeumgwanChong, they recovered something like 11,500 artifacts. Think about that, including incredibly delicate items like the famous Chonmato, that painting of a heavenly horse on birch bark. That kind of preservation was only possible because the Jeksik Magwakban structure kept the inner chambers relatively stable and protected for centuries.
So looking at all these thousands of artifacts, the gold crowns consistently turn up only in these top-tier royal burial complexes. What do we think the crown's final job was inside the tomb?
That's where its function seems to shift, which is really fascinating. There's no doubt these crowns were worn in life, probably during important ceremonies, to visibly declare the king's supreme status. But how they were found in the tombs tells another story.
How so?
In several cases, crowns were found carefully placed over the face of the deceased, sometimes pressed somewhat flat, almost like a golden death mask. This suggests a deliberate ritual placement.
So it wasn't just tossed in, it was positioned with intent.
Exactly. It seems that in death, the crown's role transformed. It went from being a symbol of living power and authority to becoming a piece of permanent regalia meant to bestow eternal sanctity upon the king in the afterlife. By bearing the king with this ultimate symbol of his connection to the divine, this shamanic tool, the Silla elite were likely trying to ensure his sacred status continued forever, guaranteeing the legitimacy and divine favor of the royal line even after he was gone.
All right, let's get into the design itself. Because when you see a Silla gold crown, it's instantly recognizable. It doesn't look like anything else. Not Egyptian pharaoh crowns, not Roman laurel wreaths, not European royal crowns. Can you describe that unique signature structure for us?
Sure. The basic framework is pretty consistent across the major gold crowns we found. You start with a main circular band, the diadem, that goes around the head. That's called the darian.
Okay, the headband part.
Right. Then rising up from this band, you typically have three prominent upright ornaments right at the front and sides. These are shaped like the Chinese character chul, which means to emerge or to go out.
The tree branch-looking things.
Kind of, yeah, often described that way. And flanking these three chul shapes, you usually have two more uprights, often at the backsides, that look more like stylized antlers or perhaps more elaborate tree branches.
Okay, so 5 uprights in total, usually.
Typically. And then comes the really distinctive part. The whole thing is covered in hundreds, sometimes thousands, of tiny dangling gold spangles. Those are called yeongnak. And often, attached to the uprights or the main band, you have these unique curved jade ornaments called gokok.
Now, those chul shapes, the main uprights, the general agreement among scholars is that they're not just random decorations, right?
Yeah.
They represent something specific, something deeply symbolic and powerful from shamanism.
Yes, the consensus view is that these shoe-shaped uprights symbolize the shinpak, or sacred tree. Sometimes it's called the cosmic tree or the world tree. This is a really fundamental concept in Siberian and Northern Eurasian shamanism. That's the hidden code in the gold.
Okay, for listeners who might not be familiar with the cosmic tree idea, why is that so important in shamanic beliefs?
Well, in many shamanic worldviews, the cosmic tree is seen as the axis mundi, literally, the axis of the world. It's the central pillar that connects the different realms. The upper world, where the celestial gods live, the middle world, our human world, and the lower world, the realm of spirits or ancestors.
And the shaman travels between these worlds.
Exactly. The shaman's spiritual journey, their communication with spirits or deities, often involves ritually ascending or descending this cosmic tree.
So by putting that tree symbol right on his crown, the king is making a massive statement. He's not just saying, I'm rich. He's visually declaring, I am the only one who can bridge these worlds. I am the shaman king, the sole intermediary between the gods and the people of Silla.
That's precisely the claim embedded in the design. It's profoundly spiritual, but also intensely political. Remember KingJijeung adopting the title Wang that was borrowed from China? But this crown design, it taps into a different northern source of legitimacy, this powerful shamanic tradition. It gave the Silla kings a unique divine mandate that set them apart, making their rule seem absolute and unquestionable by any local rivals.
The design is so unique it begs the question, where did it come from? Is there solid proof Silla was deliberately borrowing or importing this northern shamanic imagery?
Oh, absolutely. The design has echoes that reach far beyond Korea. If you look at, say, crowns worn by Manchurian shamans even into the 20th century, you see some striking similarities in the upright elements and the overall concept.
Wow, even that recently.
Yes, and even more compelling, if you go way back to the 1st century AD, archaeologists have found crowns among the Sarmatians, a nomadic people who lived way over by the Black Sea, that also show some structural parallels, particularly the idea of upright elements rising from a diadem.
Sarmatians. Black Sea. That's thousands of miles away. That really emphasizes this huge Eurasian connection. But is there any, physical proof, something found in a Silla tomb that directly links them to the north?
Yes, there is a smoking gun, so to speak. Found inside GeumgwanChong, right alongside the gold crown, was the Bakoshupikwanmo. That translates to the white birch bark cap.
A cap made of birch bark.
Exactly. And here's the crucial part. Birch trees don't naturally grow in the relatively mild climate of Gyeongju, where Silla's capital was. They are trees of the colder northern regions, places like Manchuria and Siberia.
That's conclusive then. Silla wasn't just getting inspired by northern ideas. They were literally importing the materials, the actual bark, associated with those northern shamanic traditions.
It confirms it. The Silla royals, in their quest for ultimate legitimacy, were actively bringing in both the symbolism and the physical materials straight from the spiritual heartland of those northern steppe cultures. So the gold crown isn't just Silla gold, it's a testament to Silla being this sophisticated hub, able to blend local metalworking genius with imported Eurasian religious ideas to create something uniquely powerful and uniquely Silla.
So the symbolism is incredibly deep, connecting Silla to this vast Eurasian network. But let's talk about the sheer artistry, too. These crowns are just symbolic. They are masterpieces of technology for their time. When you look closely at the gold work, it's just breathtaking. The gold plates are incredibly thin, the way they cut those intricate upright shapes, and especially those tiny spangles, the yeongak, they're often attached with super fine woven gold threads. It really shows off the peak of ancient metalworking skills like GeumgwanChong, granulation.
The level of sophistication is really top tier for ancient East Asia, absolutely. But what makes Silla stand out globally isn't just the skill, it's the consistency. Silla is basically the only ancient dynasty anywhere in the world that we know of that established this one highly specific, instantly recognizable crown design and then used it consistently for almost a century, maybe more.
Wow, really? Only Silla?
As far as we know, yes. This continuity in the core design across multiple generations of rulers, that's powerful evidence in itself for the stability and the continuity of their exclusive royal authority. The design became the unchanging symbol of the Silla throne.
Okay, let's zoom in on those little details that make the crown so dazzling.
Yeah.
We mentioned the yeongnak, the spangles. What was their purpose beyond just looking sparkly?
Well, they were attached very delicately, often with fine gold wire loops. This meant they were incredibly sensitive to even the slightest movement. Imagine the king wearing this, maybe moving during a ritual, perhaps in flickering torchlight.
They shimmer and tremble.
Exactly. Thousands of tiny gold pieces catching the light, maybe even making a soft metallic sound. It would maximize the visual impact, certainly, but also the auditory effect. It would help create this dazzling, almost otherworldly, sacred atmosphere around the king, reinforcing that connection to the divine through sensory overload.
Very theatrical. And the other key decoration, the goko. These comma-shaped, usually green jade pieces, were they just added for color, a nice contrast to the gold?
Oh, they were far more than just decoration. The gokok seemed to have carried immense symbolic weight and were a major status marker within the elite. Think about this. Out of maybe 130 or so large Silla crowns and related gilded crowns found so far, only 4 gold crowns and 1 gilded bronze crown actually have these curved jades attached.
Only 5 in total. That's incredibly rare.
Extremely rare. It confirms they signified something very special, perhaps a particular level of royal maturity or supreme status.
And the shape itself, that curved comma or C shape, what did that symbolize?
The interpretations vary slightly, but the most common ideas are that the shape resembles either a fetus, suggesting life, birth, and vitality, or perhaps a coiled dragon, symbolizing power and kingship. In either case, it points towards themes of life force, fertility, maybe rebirth, and definitely mature, established royal power.
And you can learn things from crowns that don't have them, too.
Possibly, yes. For instance, the gold crown found in the GeumgwanChong tomb didn't have any goko. Based on this absence and maybe other factors from the tomb, some scholars have speculated that perhaps the person buried there was a young king, a minor, someone who hadn't yet reached the full status associated with these potent symbols.
That gives us a fascinating glimpse into potential nuances within the Silla monarchy itself. Okay, but here comes the real geopolitical twist. We've got gold, probably sourced locally in Korea. We've got northern shamanic symbols. But the jade, these precious green goko, where did Silla get the jade?
This is probably the most surprising discovery about the crowns, revealed through scientific analysis. These highly valued, beautiful green nephrite jades, they weren't local, they were imported from Japan.
Wait, seriously, imported from Japan? The rarest, maybe most symbolically potent ornaments besides the gold itself came from across the sea.
Yes. And you have to think about what that means economically. Back in the 5th and 6th centuries, high-quality jade like this was likely considered even more valuable, more precious than gold.
More valuable than gold. Wow.
Because it was harder to source, harder to transport safely across the sea, harder to carve. The fact that Silla royalty insisted on using this incredibly expensive imported Japanese jade for their most sacred regalia proves they commanded immense economic power. They had the wealth and the reach to manage complex, long-distance maritime trade routes across the East Sea or Korea Strait.
Okay, let's put that all together then. A Silla gold crown is this incredible fusion object. It's got northern Siberian shamanic symbolism in its core design. It showcases peak, local Silla goldworking technology. And it's adorned with super high-status, luxury imports from Japan. It's like a map of Silla's world.
It's the ultimate synthesis, exactly. The crown is definitive proof that Silla wasn't some isolated kingdom tucked away in the corner of the peninsula. It was a dynamic, powerful player, an economic and cultural hub sitting right at the crossroads of ancient East Asian trade networks. It skillfully combined northern religious authority with southern luxury goods, all crafted with local genius to create an unparalleled symbol of absolute power.
So we've journeyed from KingJijeung's shaky start through the revolution in names, bodies, and statecraft, right into the intricate details of the gold and jade that reveal this vast Eurasian network. When you step back, Claire, the Silla gold crown really occupies a special, revered position in global archaeology, doesn't it?
It truly does. The combination of factors is unique. You have the distinct, instantly recognizable artistry. You have the incredible state of preservation, thanks largely to those protective Joksiak tombs. And then there's the sheer number of them found. It really makes Silla stand out worldwide. It's no wonder that bringing these crowns together from places like KingJijeung, GeumgwanChong, GeumgwanChong, Wangnam-dachong for one big exhibition was like a dream come true for archaeologists for decades. They represent this lost golden age, miraculously preserved.
And what does this ancient symbol, representing a powerful, consolidated kingdom from 1,500 years ago, mean for Korea today? How does it function now?
Well, it absolutely transcends history. The crown functions today as a really vital asset for South Korea's modern soft power. Its undeniable beauty, that unique symbolism, even the lingering mysteries like Isajiwang, they all capture international attention, spark scholarly interest, and really help promote cultural exchange on a global level.
Which brings us right back to where we started seeing the crown used in diplomacy, like at the APEC summit.
Precisely. Using the crown, or a high-quality representation of it, in those high-profile settings shows it's much more than just a museum piece behind glass. It becomes a kind of living cultural heritage. It's used to communicate national identity, historical depth, cultural sophistication, basically, to elevate South Korea's image and prestige on the world stage. And it works so well because it's generally seen as politically neutral, yet universally recognized as a symbol of incredible wealth, power, and artistry.
Okay, so for our listeners who've been captivated by this story and now desperately want to see one of these golden marvels in person, where should they go?
The main collections of the most famous crowns are mostly divided between two key places: the National Museum of Korea, which is in Seoul, and the National Gyeongju Museum, located right in the heartland of ancient Silla.
And the really famous one from GeumgwanChong.
That one, yes, the iconic GeumgwanChong crown, which is officially designated National Treasure. No. Honored 88 is housed at the National Gyeongju Museum. If you ever get the chance, I absolutely recommend going to see it. Experiencing the scale, the shimmer, the sheer presence of that gold artifact, it's something else.
Fantastic. You know, the big takeaway for me is just how plugged in Silla really was. Looking north towards the steppes for religious ideas and legitimacy, looking south across the sea to Japan for luxury materials and economic clout.
That's perhaps the most crucial realization, I think. The crown, this ultimate symbol of Silla's unique, absolute power, wasn't created in isolation. It was forged through active, aggressive cultural borrowing and economic integration. It completely shatters any old ideas of Silla being some minor peripheral kingdom. It forces us to see it as a major player in that vast, ancient Eurasian network, connected to Huns, Sarmatians, ancient Japan, and more. And that complexity, that interconnectedness, that's maybe the most provocative thought to leave our listeners with as they picture this magnificent golden treasure.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible untold story of the Silla Gold Crown. We really hope you enjoyed uncovering some of the secrets of ancient power, shaman kings, and global connections hidden beneath all that glittering gold. We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration here on Story Radio Station. And finally, please remember to subscribe, like this deep dive, and hit that notification bell. Thank you for listening.